commiserating behind the scenes.
Yeah, we're talking about all kinds of crazy things and not crazy things. We were catching up, right? We were catching up. And so I am still in Missouri, and let me tell you, I'm freezing to death. This Texas, I have acclimated to Texas. It is not like it used to be. And so I've got socks on. My mother gave me this lovely hat thing to put on to cover my ears, and it's got rhinestones on it, which matches my winter coat. And then Jennifer is at her new position at one of the colleges, right?
Yeah.
So we are still having some technical issues because I am, on Wi-Fi at my mother's shop, and it's pouring down rain outside. It's been raining since yesterday. Jennifer was just talking about being in a hole where she's working, and and not sure. Normally when we do CCO live, we look at YouTube and Facebook, and we are looking at the chats. And again, this is really casual, supposed to be a lot of fun for us to talk about kind of bits about whatever's happening out there.
Hi, Rick.
So you can see the chats?
I'm on Facebook. Yeah, I can see it.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm going to try to bring up YouTube. Hey, we got a great topic to talk about tonight, and I think it's going to generate some good conversation. So again, remember, feel free to comment, and we'll, as we're live streaming, anything that you want to add or talk about, very casual. We're supposed to just have fun with this. And we're going to talk about ICD-11. So I went a few weeks ago to the Fort Worth Symposium. It was the Cowtown Coding Symposium. It was so much fun. Excellent speakers. I wish I was one, but I'm not tooting my own horn. The most fun speaker, though, had to be the Texas Ranger that was there, the real live Texas Ranger. I should have put up a picture of him. That was fun. My husband got to go with me, so there's a picture of him and I next to the Texas Ranger, and he even showed us his boots, which has the Texas Ranger
on your
logo
page?
on. Yes, it is.
Oh,
you saw it?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah, I saw it on your page.
It was a lot of fun. Real life Texas Ranger. Texas Rangers aren't what they used to be. Now they're investigative part of for the state of Texas. But anyway, Amber, she did the updates for ICD-10, which, as you know, we had already done ours. So it was fun listening to how she presented that. But at the end, she wrapped up with talking about ICD-11. And I honestly haven't been paying attention. And she's been playing with it. And so Boyd had asked me, he says, what are we talking about Wednesday? And I was like, ICD-11. Let's talk about it. So I want to give a special shout out to Amber, who has taken classes with us and used some of our stuff. Look at all of her lovely credentials. She was really fun to listen to. And she really likes ICD-11. But of course, you have to be an ICD-10 or ICD-10, ICD lover, period. It is different. Now, I looked at it like a year ago and read some stuff on it, but honestly, I haven't looked into it since then because I kept thinking, it's in the future. But it was 2022 is when it's supposed to come out.
To the member states. That doesn't mean us. That doesn't mean United States.
Correct. So, now, it is being beta tested throughout other countries. So ICD-10 had been used by other countries for years, and then we finally adopted it, right? And so now we've only been into it a few years, and now we're already going to switch to 11. But, before we really start talking about that, please, guys, do not freak out about it, okay? As coders, we're adaptable. We research and we're adaptable because things change every year. That just does the medical field. There are some things that are stagnant and stay the same all the time.
We're losing,
I was talking to somebody today, and she was telling me one of her cardiologists. Let me take my camera off for a minute. Am I back? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So she was saying that her cardiologist, one of her cardiologists bills a 99205 for everything. And I said, why would he do that? And she said, well, of course, he just knows that the coders clean it up for him. But because if he does a cabbage and then he turns around and sees him for, another thing like atherosclerosis, whatever, he says it's new. It's a new patient again or something. And she said, I don't even try to.
It's got
he
some
just
good
puts it on
coders.
everything. Yeah. So they all. She just says he does it for everything. Yeah. They take care of it for you. But I got tickled about that, and when you said that, and he doesn't. Yeah, I don't know how old he is, but I got the impression maybe he was a little bit older, and he just doesn't want to change.
Yep. So.
You think we keep losing her?
Uh-oh. Do we lose her again?
Yeah, kind of. It's too quiet for sure.
Well, luckily, I know some information about this.
Go for it.
It's kind of interesting because this class that I'm sitting here in right now is my ICD-10 class. So I'm teaching current HIM students ICD-10. So today we were just learning about endocrine system, chapter, D and E codes. And we were talking about, we took a little quiz that we found online, and we're just kind of, I had Halloween candy to give out to prize winners. So we did a little quiz that we found online. And one of them was talking about ICD-9 to the ICD-10. And it was kind of funny because I was throwing out there, I was like, they've learned by now, by all these tests that they've taken, that ICD-10 is 3 to 7 codes. And I said, well, ICD-9, was one of the questions. And that used to be 5. And I'm like, well, no, not always, because 354 was carpal tunnel. But osteoarthritis of the knee is 719.16. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I can still quote ICD-9 terms. I can't tell you what the ICD-10 equivalent is, and now it's going to go to ICD-11. But so I said, we change this up a lot with especially revisions that we get every year. Of course, it changes. New codes that you think, gosh, that diagnosis has been around for 50 years. How come we're just getting a new code for it this year? Well, because the codes that we're working with, actually in ICD-10, we started back in the 90s with these codes. So that's why they're only just now kind of getting updated. And ICD-11 was started back in the 2000s at some time. So so we've been working on these things for a while. It takes us a little while to kind of get it all together, I think. So did we get you back, Alicia?
I think I came back.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
It gets very quiet, and I heard you stop talking, and so I thought I'm going to bring this up on my phone on YouTube so that I can keep it going here and make sure when I go off, it'll. You know what? We have not had any really major technical issues in a very long time, have we?
Nope.
It's been kind of funny.
And many in the past couple weeks. No.
Yeah. That's one of the perks of traveling, I guess, right? Is that, yeah.
Well, yeah, my internet kept going out on Thursday, and I think it kept losing me, and yeah.
I'm looking to see if I can figure out how to, on my phone, to bring up the chats, but I'll work on it again in a minute. Hey, there's the categories for 11.
There's new chapters.
Yeah, now that's really small. I'm sorry, guys, but let me try to put it in presentation mode again. I was afraid when I lost you that, let's see if we can do that. Is that a little bit better? You can see it better?
Yep.
So we were just looking at some neoplasms. I pulled some code examples from the nervous system and I think endocrine for diabetes, but predominantly everything looks the same, right?
They've broken out some of the systems a little bit more. There's 27 chapters apparently now, versus
we didn't have
previous chapters. Yeah.
What was it? Conditions related to sexual health. Now we've never had that before.
No.
Developmental and anomalies was never by itself.
We have congenital. Yeah, we had congenital before. Yeah.
But did it have its own chapter? I don't think it had its own chapter, did it?
It's Q. It's a Q section. Q.
But that was not just developmental, right? That is all genetic.
Since I'm teaching it.
Q's is all genetic anomalies, not just developmental.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, you might be right.
Yeah. Let's see, all of these over here. Sleep-wake disorders, we didn't have a chapter for just that, which
it was, congenital malformations, deformations, and chromosomal abnormalities.
Yeah. And
so I guess
sleep-wake disorders, I suspect that's broadened because of so many sleep studies, right? And I think they realize what what having things like sleep apnea does to the other systems.
Yeah, to better identify some of the disorders that are out there, like the sexual health, they took it out of the F mental category and made them, to kind of better describe some of these codes that they have. Yeah.
And notice supplementary section for functioning assessment and extension codes. I'll have to look into that and see. I think extension codes, like X is in their code sets, have always been for, placement holder. So I think that's kind of maybe what they're doing.
Well, extenders,
I'm not sure.
Extenders are the A, D, S, H, K. At the end of the code are the extenders. So if that's what they mean by extension codes, possibly. So I don't know.
Maybe it's going to be a code, something that you'll extend as a new code. Wait, so like if you had a fracture, you'd have one code for the fracture, but then you'd have another code with the extension code stating it was initial treatment or supplement or sequela or whatever, right?
Some kind of malformation or malunion, yeah.
So this was actually pulled together, I guess, that Amber had this all set up. So I don't know if she pulled this from someplace else, but I think she did it on her own. I changed it. I didn't make it as nice and pretty as hers. From her slide deck, but I did get it from her, so I want to make sure I give her attribution. But she pulled out some very common things that we're used to seeing. 11.2, it would be 5A11, and notice that we've got type 2 with renal complication, and it's only type 2 diabetes with the renal manifestation not listed. So Jennifer and I were talking before we came on, and we went and we looked at it because there's a link that I can show you at the end of the resources that allow you to go in and play with a code set. And from what we understand, Jennifer can add to this, but it looks like it goes back towards like what we did in ICD-9, where you list the diabetes and then you list separately the renal manifestation. So if it's CKD3, you would do 5A11, and then you would do the code for the renal the CKD. And so they're listed separately. They're not a combo code like 10 is set up. Everything would be listed separately.
That's what we're assuming. So if anybody has any information different than that, or they've heard anything different. Yeah.
Because make sure you chat, let us know, go in the club, but if you're live streaming with us on Facebook, YouTube, or LinkedIn, make sure you post. If some of you guys know anybody, I mean, I know they're beta testing it in the US in different places, but I don't know where they're doing it. It'd be interesting if any of you guys were aware or know of anybody that's involved, or their facility or organizations involved in the beta test, to see how they're coding side by side. And
let's see here. I can see some of, I'm trying to get all of my chats.
This is supposed to be user friendly because it's like, but one of the nice, what if, you know, one of the thing about having ICD-10 is that there were combo codes, so it meant we didn't have to code so many codes. So our UB04 forms and our 1500 forms, we didn't have to put as many codes, right? But now if we go back to having these all expanded out into individual codes to paint the picture, then that means we'll need more. We go back to what 9 was, where we have to list everything separately. And I don't think that they'll take the causal relationship away. I can't imagine them doing that because 9 didn't have a causal relationship, and 10 didn't at first, but it, like within a year or two, they did change that. I'd hate to see that go away. So just for yourself, like depressive disorder would be an F code, but it would be a chapter 6 code, A7Z, depressive disorders unspecified. Okay. I-10 is going to be BA00.Z, and our good old COPD is going to be CA22AZ. And I guess Z is probably going to be unspecified. Notice we see that 3 times, because with ICD-9, you memorize like 400 codes were cardiology problems, right? With the comparison is I codes, cardiology problems. So what is going to be our cardiology? Is it going to be B? You know, B codes? I don't know.
Yeah.
You know, is this chapter 5 endocrine? You know, what's CA stand for? Chronic. You know, so it'll be interesting for us to learn, and we want to know that. This is what it looks like in the format of the tabular, and it still has the exclusions, but matching terms was interesting. That is something we don't get, and diabetes, not very much. However, when I looked up hypertension, it had so many matching terms I couldn't even fit it on a page, even if I made it like 9-point font, you know. But it's kind of cool how it says, okay, it's giving us verbiage, right? And then the post coordination, that's where it brings up things like, is there a renal disorder, CKD? And so I didn't click on those, but that lets you look at these. And notice this does give us diabetes mellitus in pregnancy. That's a J code. Other unspecified 5. So 5 is our, obviously, something to do with endocrine. 5A1011 for 2.
Remember,
you know,
chapter 5 and what they had was for the endocrine system. So we were looking at some of them. We were trying to piece together their theory here. We still haven't figured it out.
And we don't get to see the guide. They don't have. We couldn't find anything that said the guidelines, right? I didn't. You didn't see any, Jennifer, did you?
No, no. That's what we didn't know, is if they're, if there was what their coding conventions are. You know,
coding conventions. That's what I was. Yeah. So that's that's good to know.
Yeah.
Let me show you that next page. So I pulled out from the index. Okay, it's set up a little bit different because it gives you, like, say you look up type 2 diabetes, and then you pick one of those other things in that previous screen, you know, and then it brings up like the index, and then it gives you these arrows. And if you click on, you know, the diabetic acidosis, you open that field up and it gives you this drop down. And these are terms we're used to, but I don't remember diabetic lactic acidosis as a code. Is that one you'd heard of? I mean, I think I'm pretty savvy with these codes, but lactic acidosis,
lactic acidosis. Okay, let me look it up.
I don't think that's an ICD-10 code. So I was trying to figure out, like, are they broadening it? Are we getting more, you know, metabolic acidosis? Now I've heard of that, but I don't, and I think maybe there's, And we know there's coma, ketoacidosis with coma and without coma. That's already.
I guess
in all
that's
the-
maybe where they're taking it from, is the keto, the ketonic acidosis that we currently use.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I don't know,
But
maybe.
lactic and metabolic,
Are they
higher
under
specificity. Now we don't have any drop downs, any of these arrows.
Right.
So this is it for acidosis. These are our choices. That's the full code.
Right.
And that doesn't tell if it's a type 1 or type 2 either. It doesn't distinguish. So I don't know. Do
Right.
we do type 1 diabetes and then code diabetic lactic acidosis? We don't know that yet either. So that'll be interesting to find out. Again, share your thoughts. And I'm sorry that I hate it. I love at home where I have, my multiple computers where I can be looking at your chats, and I'm kind of missing that. So please make sure that you comment. Oh man, I'm so cold. I got a cramp in my leg. I'm feeling sorry for myself, guys. We're going back to Texas, and then I'm going to feel sorry for myself because I miss my folks and my family that I've enjoyed being down here. Okay, so I grabbed another one, other disorders of glucose regulation or pancreatic internal secretions. And I opened that up and noticed that here, intermittent hyperglycemia, we could open that up, and I didn't. But and also abnormal secretions of gastrin. Now I know about that, but I didn't do the drop down. But I've read documentation about that. Glucagon, I've read documentation. But that just shows you, and this was in the endocrine system. I just picked one to let you kind of get an idea of how it opens up and broadens and does the drop down. So instead of the indents, we're getting these triangles, which is kind of unusual because a triangle in medical documentation means change. So I don't think I like the triangle format. I think they need to do something else besides the triangle. I'm just kind of.
It looks like previously we had type 1 and type 2 diabetes with ketoacidosis, and then ketoacidosis with coma. So we didn't have.
But we never have had lactic ketoacidosis.
Yeah, doesn't look like it.
I think you guys want some homework. We wouldn't call it homework. We got to get out of teacher mode. And now that Jennifer's teaching full time, she's going to be in teacher mode, and she's going to be talking like that too. So for a little light research on the side, guys, go look up diabetic lactic ketoacidosis and let us know. Tell us either in the club what you found, share what you found about it, or write in your chat, whichever platform you're using, Facebook or YouTube. But let us know what you find out about it. Give us a link in there too. I think it should let you post a link. And so we obviously need to know more about that. It's obviously a thing. Let's look at this one.
Yeah.
Diseases of the nervous system. So chapter 8, right, is going to be diseases of the nervous system. And when I think of the nervous system, I always go to epilepsy because of my son. But, and notice it is here with the drop down. So I did pull examples of that. I tried to find one of my son's codes, and it's not what I'm used to looking at. I can tell you, I was like, I don't know. Movement disorders, we forget about that, guys. Palsies and stuff like that end up being under movement disorders.
The big one right there, cerebrovascular disorders.
Yeah. So the people having strokes, human prion disease. Cerebral palsy usually has its own place. Disorders of cerebral spinal fluid pressure or flow. I've not seen that divided up into, that would be when you have an epidural, you get a headache. Sometimes you have a spinal epidural for pregnancy, you get a bad headache. and that would be a temporary disorder. I didn't want to move that yet. Let me go back. Toxic disorders of the nervous system, nutritional or toxic. I don't remember seeing that before. So I picked epilepsy because I was going to try to code my son, number 5. And here are my options. And in the past, we didn't think of him being status epilepticus, which just means abnormal seizures that last longer than normal, and then they have one seizure that turns into another type of seizure. So now he would be classified as status epilepticus because we found out that he has occipital first, and then it turns into frontal lobe, which is focal, and then he turns clonic-tonic. So he actually seizes for 3 to 5 minutes occipital before it clicks into the front and goes clonic-tonic, which is the typical seizures. I'm trying to lift my foot up off the cold floor here. If I fall off my chair, it'll just be a little more excitement for you. So he's intractable. I didn't see anything under intractable to state that he was intractable. So that must be a status, or not this one, but what we would extender code, maybe, because
that could be a more specific type of
you're either intractable or not intractable. Yeah. And if you don't know what that term means, it just means that nothing makes it stop, or medicine isn't working right now. So you have seizures. It's kind of like being uncontrolled with diabetes, intractable. So it usually in 10 it says what type of you have, and it's intractable or non-intractable changes your code. So due to structure or metabolic conditions, so something is off in the structure of your brain, metabolic, chemical, or disease, presumed genetic syndromes. Well, he was tested and nothing's genetic derivative. Encephalopathies, he doesn't have anything like that. There is not an acute cause, which would be some type of trauma, right? Or something that happened and then you spike a fever, right? That would be an acute cause. Febrile seizures are probably into that, maybe. If you have any insight, don't let me hog talking. Single seizure due to remote cause. Oh, good. Single seizure due to remote causes. Now, that's interesting because a single seizure by itself, in other words, you don't typically have a seizure, but it's definitely a seizure, and something outside has caused it. And that would be something like, well, we're not expecting you to have another seizure. Because notice this is epilepsy or seizures. Then single unprovoked seizure. Now that, if it wasn't a febrile seizure, febrile would be provoked. So I would think that if a person had a febrile seizure, which children tend to have febrile seizures, what happens is if they get an ear infection, their fever spikes up real high and then comes down. And it's like having a surge. That's why you need a surge protector when you plug something in, because it isn't the electric volt that gets them. It's when it stops and it like crashes and then crashes your computer. So let's see. Status epilepticus just means that you have more than one type of seizure and they're not typical. They're atypical, so they last longer usually. Acute repetitive seizures. Now, repetitive seizures, but acute. So that kind of threw me. Types of seizures, again, and notice these all start with an 8 and they have an A, and then most of them are 6, which are they all 6? Yeah, so that tells us something.
You're getting into some kind of specificity there, yeah.
Yeah. So we notice unspecified looks like it's Z and other must be a Y. So what did I do? I picked types of seizures. Now, he does have frontal focal, right frontal lobe, which are focal seizures. And unaware seizures, to my best of knowledge, means you don't know you're having them. Absent seizures just means you kind of stare off and you don't, you're staring off into space, and a lot of times children will do that and you don't realize that they're even having them. Adults will do that too. You just think they're kind of zoning out for a minute and thinking. But notice the difference between these two is atypical and typical. So what's classified as an atypical absent seizure means it's not normal. And then there's normal absent seizures, which would be things like you stare off into space for a little while, and then you come back and no other side effects. You might be tired afterwards or something, but you come back. And again, people may not even realize that that's happening. Atypical, when that happens, it doesn't last very long. So atypical would be that it happens longer. That would be not normal. Seizures themselves should never be more than 5 minutes. So they're usually 2 to 3 minutes, even if they're clonic tonic. My son's not, he's atypical. His last 7 to 12 minutes now. They used to last, the longest was over an hour. Focal aware, so I'm assuming he knows something happened. So my son knows now when the occipital starts, sometimes he knows and he'll come tell us, but then he gets paralyzed on his left side, and then he goes into clonic tonic. So generalized tonic-clonic seizures or myoclonic. So clonic tonic is when you either curl in or you arch, either one, and you vibrate. Myoclonic, it has to do with the muscles, the way that muscles react. Tonic is, okay, one, I can't remember which it is. One is arching and one's curling in. One's tonic is either arching or curling in, and clonic, I can't remember which is which. Because he just has a clonic tonic, so he arches or curls in and shakes. It looks like he's being electrocuted, honestly. Atonic, meaning you don't move. Other specified types of seizures and type of seizures unspecified. So I really I'm not familiar with this verbiage. It's not that I'm not familiar. It's not the same verbiage as an ICD-10. And so if that's the case, that means we have to let the providers know what the new verbiage is. Now they know what all this stuff, their neurologist is going to know, but it isn't going to be the way they document. Or maybe they do document like this and we just don't pick it up because it's not the way our code set tells us to use it, right? So we'll both have a learning curve. So I picked one, and description. So the seizure is characterized by sudden loss of diminutive of muscle tone without apparent preceding myoclonic or tonic event lasting 1 to 2 seconds, involving head, trunk, jaw, or limb or muscles. So he is sudden loss of muscle tone. He acts like a stroke victim. And so he loses the muscle tone. But it says without apparent preceding, he doesn't have preceding myoclonic tonic. It happens afterwards. And it doesn't last 1 to 2 seconds. His lasts 5 to 6 minutes, and then he goes into clonic tonic, which lasts 7 to 12 minutes. But you can click on this and show all of the exclusions, and then it tells you that there are notes, and I went ahead and opened that up, and it just says to use an additional code to identify the type of seizure. And so that tells me that, like what Jennifer and I were talking about earlier, that we're going to be using more codes to describe one condition. Mm-hmm. So diabetes, type 1, type 2, and maybe letting you know a little bit more information. And then we're going to be coding, in addition, the manifestations.
Well, and I'm curious too, because there was one thing that says, let me see if I can find it again. Something about that only 1/3 of the cases of mortality have actually been coded properly, coded correctly, because the complexity, it's a number,
She did.
those,
Amber
it's only
said
about
that.
1/3, so that way that needs to make the revision. So I'm not sure if that's because of those combination codes. Maybe people were choosing those, but then they really can't determine the mortality, the cause of mortality, or, maybe that's why we have to go back to 2 codes or multiple codes to describe the exact
The
scenario.
higher specificity.
Maybe. I'm just guessing here. I'm just
Well,
trying to
okay,
piece things
let's use the
together. So
example of the CKD, which I can't remember if I pulled that one or not. But when you look, okay, we looked at the diabetes and then we went and looked at CKD. And CKD codes, it gave us, stages. So we had 1, 2, 3, 4. But in 3, they had 3A and 3B. Okay, we don't have that in 10, and we didn't have it in 9. And so I happen to know what 3A and 3B means, but kind of. I just know that more or less I just kind of know they existed. But the fact is that statistically gives us more information, right? So what Jennifer, I think she's right. I think we code for statistical purposes, right? You hear me say this all the time. This isn't about getting paid. This is getting to the highest specificity so we can understand the disease process and the mortality and morbidity of the diseases. And that's what the World Health Organization does. And so therefore, this code set must be able to clarify at a higher specificity. Maybe that's what it is.
yeah.
I think you're right. So let's see, what did I do? Oh, so this other code, convulsion status epilepticus, because it told you to go pick the type of seizures. So he would be status epilepticus because it's defined as whenever you have extended seizures. Seizures don't usually typically last more than 5 minutes, but his do. And so more than 5 minutes of continuous clinical convulsion seizure activity, which would be, it could be absence, it could be clonic tonic, it could be all kinds. And then it says recurrent seizure activity without recovery. So returning to baseline and then going back. So that's actually what he does, because we found out with that seizure study that he did, which, mind you, remember I told you we're going to be having our nuclear medicine. Stay tuned for that. I'm still working on that. Really fascinating stuff that they could do with that nuclear medicine. But sorry, my brain's snapping. I've been around my mother too long. She's like this, and we don't even have to complete sentences, and we understand what we're talking about. It drives my husband nuts. So he starts out with that occipital seizure, and then without returning to baseline and it's stopping, he turns into right frontal lobe, which gives him the clonic tonic. So he loses movement on the left side, and I always say he becomes a stroke victim, but he can talk and he can tell you, like he could tell you who the president was. He could tell you what his name was. He can't do letters or numbers. He doesn't recognize them, but he can tell you all kinds of things. But he could not squeeze both your hands. He couldn't even he could pick up his left arm a little bit, but it was just limp. But he could do really good on the right. And then after about 5 minutes, boom, no recovery. He went straight into clonic tonic. And we wouldn't have known that if he wouldn't have been hooked up for the 24 hours for the EEG. So they actually rang the buzzer or the alarm or whatever, and everybody came running. And we were saying, what? He's not having a seizure? And they said, yes, he is. And they know, right? And then, everybody's like, Gary, are you okay? Or it's like, he goes, yeah, what? And then of course, then they're bugging him and asking him questions. He's answering them. And then they said, he's 3 minutes in. Well, you don't normally have him after 5 minutes. He's 5 minutes in, and that's when we realized, he couldn't move his arm. And then there's 6 minutes in, and about 7 minutes in with that, then he went into clonic tonic. And that's what we're used to seeing. So he was in that for like 4 minutes, but then they gave him the Ativan, and so it started pulling him out. But so he is a status epilepticus because it meets that definition. Now, we could look at the exclusions, which if you look at those, it says like in pregnancy and all that's exclusions we're used to seeing. And then this was the only thing that says use an additional code to identify the type of seizure. Oh, shoot. How are we doing on time? Oh, we're doing good.
20 minutes still.
Oh,
I got some questions over here, so.
Okay.
So since we're talking about it, Whitney asked if it says that the patient has a seizure disorder, would you code it as epilepsy or an unspecified convulsion, or would you need to query? And I thought this was a coding guideline. Off the top of my head, I can't recall. Do you know?
Yeah, it's epilepsy. And so
you
the
code
seizure
it,
disorder.
If it says a seizure disorder, you code it as epilepsy.
But you don't know what kind it is. So you still have to query.
So you still have to query. Okay. Yeah.
A seizure disorder is not enough of a definition to get the highest specificity of a code. So seizure disorder would be epilepsy unspecified, and you don't want that. So, however, think about this. If you have a new patient, right, and he's seeing, a person for the first time, and the patient says, oh, I have epilepsy. And they said, or I have seizures. Oh, well, tell me more about your seizures. And you ask them questions and you realize they don't know the verbiage. So it's like, well, when's the last time you had a seizure? Oh, I haven't had a seizure in 3 years. Well, what happened when you had one? And he's trying to investigate and said, well, that year I had 3 seizures. Well, obviously, if you have 3 seizures and he can't say, well, it's because I had medicine or I had a head injury or blah, blah, blah. And then they say things like, well, did they put you on medicine? Yes, they did. But you don't take that medicine anymore? No. Do you remember what it was? No. So, or he could be on a medication. Say they put you on Topamax, pretty mainstream medicine that they start you on for seizures and migraines and things like that. And so let's say they put him on Topamax and he was taking 100 milligrams or 50 milligrams every day, and he's been doing that for the last several years, and he's never had another seizure. Okay, so without being a doctor, but then the doctor would say, okay, he has a seizure disorder probably. So I need to go and find out who his neurologist was, who, get some medical records and stuff. So they may go ahead and say seizure disorder kind of as a catch-all because we really don't know until they get more information, and then you code to a higher specificity. So there is not a code for seizure disorder. It tells you. I mean, maybe there is. I think there is, but I can't remember off the top of my head.
I thought there was a coding guideline about it. I can't recall.
I mean,
I've been doing so much with the class with coding guidelines. Then I did that horrid CDEO exam, and then
so have somebody.
And then
you guys look.
Yeah.
Because I don't think I can find a code on my phone. I used to, because I always had a computer with me, and now I can't look it up. So let me just Google ICD-10 seizure disorder, and it should tell us the guideline. But that means I probably have to put my glasses on. So
I have the book in front of me, but I was answering other questions, so I'd have to find it in the book and then
conversion disorder with seizures is F44, which is not that. It's not an F code. It would be a G code. Convulsions not other specified is an R code because it's a sign or symptom. R56.1 is post-traumatic. It's not that. It's just plain old seizures not otherwise specified is an R code also, so it's classified as signs or symptom. P90. Oh, that's a newborn.
Circulatory, no.
What is the code for seizure? How do you code seizure disorder? Oh, ICD-9. It was 780.39.
It doesn't.
So I guess we could convert that.
Cross-reference it, yeah.
What is G40.89? Now that is probably closer.
What is what?
Okay,
G? As
G
in G as in
40.89
George?
is a diagnosis of other seizures, a billable code. Okay, so
Yeah, it must just be pain that I'm thinking of.
yeah, I was
Instead
thinking.
of
Okay, epilepsy unspecified, not intractable, without status epilepticus is G40.909. So, or G40.89, we could look at that one, episodic and paroxysmal. So what you got to go do is look at those codes in your manual, in the tabular, and see what guidelines are associated to them. I'm going to pull this up and see what it says. Short description, epilepsy unspecified, not intractable without status epilepticus. That didn't help as much, did it? Seizure disorder. Here it is. Applicable to epilepsy, epileptic convulsions, epileptic fits, epileptic seizures, recurrent seizures, and seizure disorder. So there you go. G40.909 is also classified as seizure disorder. And then it gives a whole list of synonyms. There you go. There's no guideline that's with it. Wow, you answered that question for him. Anything else in there that was that good?
yeah, let me
You're typing
let's see
away.
here. Yeah. Let's see here.
I feel bad that I'm not looking at the chats.
Well, I've been kind of answering somebody's question back and forth about something else. So let's see here. Which I'm going to have to do more research on, and it's going to have to be put into the forum. It's going to take a lot more research.
I'm going to go ahead and put this up. Two things. Here's the resources. Go to icd.who, and you'll probably get it. But one of these gives you the information about it. The other one gives you actual practice. Okay, that you can go and have fun and play. Where I pulled that stuff, copy and pasted it. So it would be a good idea to go in and play around with that. And now, if you're a student and you're learning ICD, don't do that. Don't go in and start playing with it, because it will mess you up. Okay, don't get confused. But if you're already out there coding and you want to play around with it, then go do it. So don't forget, you guys, I don't know if you're seeing us on YouTube, Facebook, or LinkedIn, because we live stream on all three of those. You want to go see us on YouTube. It's under Medical Coding Cert, all one word. And Facebook is just under Facebook CCO. LinkedIn, I believe, is also just under CCO. I'm pretty sure it is. I think, Jennifer, do you have a LinkedIn account?
Yes, I do. Yep.
Okay, I thought you probably did. So take time not only to go find the CCO account, because you can live stream and watch us there and share with your coding friends, but go look for Jennifer and I if you want to. I believe Laureen's on there, and I know Boyd's on there. So take the time to do that and link up with us there. If you want to just know more about us in general, go to cco.us. That's the website. But what we'd really like for you guys to do, and if you want to join us on Wednesday nights, then it's a casual, just kind of whatever's happening, whatever comes to mind, feel free to mention something you want us to talk about, but it's not necessarily on the spot stuff, but kind of lighthearted, right?
Mhm.
I mean, one day we could be talking about our favorite office chair to use. You know,
Haven't
I know
found one yet.
Boyd got one of those new tables. He got one of those new tables and he's standing, you know, I saw him doing that. And I know several people that have those bouncy balls. I don't think I would do very good with that.
I do, but my legs are so long that I would
Your
either
knees are
need a
above your
larger
hips.
size ball or I need to do something different with my desk. So I got one, you know, because I sit probably 16 hours a day at my desk. So
Yeah.
especially with school right now, but
Yeah.
so
I don't know. People who have them love them, they say, but
I know at
that's
least it would just
probably
fall off
because
it.
I was going to say I would fall off and crack my head. The reason we don't hear about anybody not liking them is because they cracked their head open and died. And so they can't tell us. That's what I'm thinking. And so I don't think that would be a good thing for me. Plus, I shake my leg like
Oh yeah,
all the time. And if you've ever noticed in a video, if you guys pay attention, you could probably tell. I bet you my earrings are swinging or something, and I shake constantly. You know, or I've got something in my hand and I'm doing this. I don't know why.
If my
I just do.
husband's home
And
and he's working at his desk and I'm at mine because they're both in our bedroom,
mhm.
I have to have my headphones on so that listening to music because I can hear his legs shaking on the other side of the room. So
My
it just drives me
uncle was
crazy.
like that. I remember my uncle doing that, and I remember my mother talking about it. And it drove my father nuts. And you know, we'd be at the table or something, or we'd be eating supper when we were younger, and he'd say, "Pushing at your leg." You know, like, okay, I didn't even know I was doing it. It's not nervous energy either. I don't know what it is. Maybe it is. Oh. And I don't even drink coffee, but I did start. I don't know if that would make you stop or not. So, bouncy ball, not good for me. It's time for me to get a new office chair. Mine is a few years old. It's very comfortable still, but I got it when I was fat. And now that I'm thinner, I would like one that, you know, is smaller and doesn't take up as much space. And my son had been sitting in it and he's been picking at, I guess there was a little rip or something in it. I didn't know it was there. And he's pulled a big piece about this size of it's like faux leather, I guess, but he's pulled that off. And I look, it's like, that looks terrible. What are you doing? And then he started doing it behind me. Boyd saw it the other day. I was like, he's really... So that's going to go to my son, and I'm going to get me a cute little perky chair, I think.
Well, Whitney wants to know, what about footrests?
Oh, they say that's a definite thing to get. You should do that. And you can also get a footrest. I've seen them where you could work them, you know, like this, like a treadle sewing machine or back and forth. And it's supposed to help with the circulation in your legs.
Well, they have the little bikes, the pedicles.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Well, in fact, somebody was like, as seen on TV or something. I saw one. We don't watch a lot of TV because honestly, we can't get reception where we live. And so now that we're staying at my folks, they get, you know, they've got all these crazy wonky channels, and we're seeing all these commercials that we've never seen before. And there was one that came up and it was that little bike, you know, and they were talking about, don't sit and do, you know, nothing, exercise while you're sitting. I'm thinking the lady was like reading a book and smiling and pedaling. I was like, yeah, right. I wouldn't be doing that. I'd be falling off my chair. I'd fall off the bike.
Like I said, my legs are so long. My legs are longer. I'm taller from hip to foot than I am from hip to head. Yeah. So I would probably hit the top of my desk.
Yeah, your knees would be knocking on the... That would be funny.
We did,
that's a good idea.
We did joke at my work though that, you know, because when I did work in the office, it was, you know, we're like, we need to ask for those for Christmas, man, because, you know, we just sit there all day, and then
Yeah.
if you get up, you kind of lose your momentum. So we never want to
Right.
get up. So it's like, but we need to do something. So we was like, we should ask for those for Christmas from our bosses, but we never did. So
That's a good idea.
yeah.
That's a good idea. Because the little stress balls and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Oh.
Yep, she cut out again.
I was gonna say, is that me or is that her? I couldn't tell.
Yeah, I figured I'd come in and rescue you.
Well, she's having fun with stress balls.
I'd be interested to know.
There we go.
Yeah,
We
there
lost
you
you.
I
We
would
had
be
no idea what you
go. We
said.
didn't hear you
interested.
for last minute.
Me?
Yeah.
You were saying something wonderful about stress balls.
That's the last thing you heard?
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I was talking about this other person that was telling me that the company computer they gave him was a laptop and it doesn't have the 9 key on the side. And she goes, and that seems really weird for a coder not to have that. So she plugs in an external monitor. So that being said, how many of you guys, whether you work from home, well, if you work from home, do they give you a laptop or do they give you a desktop? Because some of them actually take a desktop, and I'd be interested to know how many of you guys run laptops. And I'm sure if you do a laptop that you plug in an external keyboard.
My laptop was mine. They didn't provide me anything. Of course, I told you they also didn't give me a lunch or a party when I left after 21
I
years
know,
either.
I can't believe that.
So
You guys need to send in some love for Jennifer. Yeah, like I said, she should have got a watch for sure.
So working remote does have some disadvantages, huh? They don't think
yeah,
you
I
can
mean,
miss
there
out
are a
on
lot
some
of companies. There are a lot of companies that do provide people with laptops, but from what I've heard, they're not the best laptops.
No.
So they're small, or they're clunky or thick, or they're
Yeah.
kind of, with the way they describe them, I think of the old computers that was the big
I think you're right.
tube, and that's the way they describe it. Like nobody
And
would
all
want
it's got in it is the
things.
program,
So,
enough to
yeah.
run the program, the platform they need, and that's it.
A desktop thin client. I guess that's what Whitney gets. Wow, that'd be nice.
Wow, good for you. I have done some remote jobs and I've had a really nice laptop, and then I have also had the real old extra thick laptop that was hard square metal,
10 pounds or
yeah. Yeah. You're
and
right.
she has
And
2 extra large monitors. Wow.
see,
That must be heaven.
that other job, they gave me a desktop and they gave me 2 external monitors, and they're 22 inches. And
Wow.
so she said, so you could actually make 4 screens on, because each monitor you could split and make 2. It's like, oh.
I just counted mine. I have 11 right now.
How many monitors?
11.
11.
11 monitors?
I have a laptop
Where-
with two 23-inch screens. I have an iPad Pro, that's 4. An iPad 6, that's 7, and then 4 LCDs. Did I say 7 already? I don't know, I lost count. And then 2 more laptops. Yeah. They're all working right now.
And okay, all at the same time. He's like, ooh. So in other words, Boyd is not the type, he's not like me, and I don't think Jennifer's like that either, that you're talking and all of a sudden squirrel, no, he's in tune to everything that's going on.
Well, I got my squirrel tendencies, that's for sure. Yeah, I wouldn't say that. Anyway, I think we did great. We are right at the top of the hour here.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys. So don't forget to reach out in the platform that you're more comfortable using, but you can always go to cco.us and share. You can just share with everybody. I think it's on YouTube and Facebook. You can click the little bell, so you're always reminded when we're going to go live, and it only pops up for a second, and so you can ignore it if you want, but if you're free, we're doing this a lot. You know, my dream is to have fiber optic, and then I want really good lighting so that I look like a supermodel, and you think that I'm super, super professional. If you only
Like-
saw my laundry basket hidden off to the side of the room, right?
If I didn't get to your question fully, like we said, I'm sitting here at school, so I have the one monitor in front of me and trying to do everything. My computer is actually being repaired right now, so I can.
Thank God.
Yeah, yes.
Long
It was
overdue
very old
soundbite.
because I bought it myself. It wasn't given to me. So if you need more clarification of your questions, go to the CCO club and put them in the forum, and
Yeah.
we can look at them, or I can get back to it in a couple more days when I get my computer back. So,
And thank you guys if you're on here and you post. We did this yesterday, and sure enough, over on the CCO club before I left, boom, 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 you guys had put your questions in there, and it was great. I was able to answer them. Thank you, Whitney did that, and so that's great because other people get to benefit from your questions. We like that.
Awesome, everybody. Until we meet again next week.
Next week,
sounds great.
Bye, guys.
I'll be back
Bye,
in
Alicia.
Texas. Bye.
Bye.
And there we go. Okay. And
We're all done.
almost.